I usually like to start these things with a quote, and today I have 90% of millionaires became so through owning real estate, Andrew Carnegie. And I feel like Chris Schwagerl is the right person to talk about that. He's a performance psychologist for real estate syndicators. After 19 years in the mental health field, he created the STARS method. The six-step process finds and destroys your limiting beliefs. Chris's clients raise 86% more capital and grow their portfolios 41%. You can find him on LinkedIn or at Infinite Lives infiniteskies.life. Chris, I think this will be very
Hey,
interesting because there's a lot of people that heard about these things, but they kind of know surface level. They never went deep. And today I would like to go a little bit deep on those things and discover a little bit more about that. Now, before we go into that, can you tell me a little bit more about your journey? How did you start and how did you end up where you are today?
oh, man. Okay, so first of all, thanks for having me here, Zivko. This is fun. I appreciate that. And you
Awesome.
nailed it, man. Most people, when they hear the word mindset or something, they're like, yeah, I got it. I got it. I've read some books. I'm good. But that is very surface level. It's a good place to start, but very surface level. And for me, my journey started back in high school. So I always noticed that like the same kids got called back to the principal's office every single day. And even though I was like a shrimpy dude, I thought, I think I can help these like tough guys. And psychology was the way that I thought that I could by understanding what made them tick, by understanding what was going right and what was going wrong with them to help them get better outcomes in life. Because I could sense that they were doing stuff that they thought was cool, but deep down they didn't think was cool. It's not fun to get in trouble. People don't like that, even though became accustomed to it. And so I went to college for psychology, got a degree there, got a degree in child psychology, got a master's degree. And then I started working at weird, interesting jobs like you do in psychology. So I worked with kids who were on probation, teaching them, different mindfulness skills. I worked at a domestic abuse center with the perpetrators of domestic violence with their kids. I worked at a residential crisis center. So this is where people go and stay for a week when they want to die or they're super anxious or they think that their wife is a hat. You go stay there for a week and then until you feel better and then you go back home. And I've done therapy connecting homeless people with resources, all sorts of stuff. Through that entire journey, I never got paid very much. In the field, we like to say, I'm here for the outcomes, not the incomes. But at some point, you're like, why are all my friends going to Costa Rica and I'm working at a bar on the weekends to make ends meet? And so then I learned about real estate investing. I didn't, at the time, I was 32 years old, living in a friend's basement den, not even a legit bedroom,
Mm.
just a den. And I read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, and it changed everything. I ate PBJs for 6 months, saved up 5 grand, bought a duplex, changed my life. Got down on a knee, married my wife. We had a baby. She just turned 9 yesterday, and that was all fine and dandy. And then found out I had kidney disease, and my wife had postpartum depression, and life was really, really, really tough for a long time. And so I used a bunch of psychological strategies on myself. And for some reason, I beat a terminal disease. At the time I was given 10 years to live. We're 8 years from that. And I've been in remission for 2 years now. I just had my checkup a couple days ago. And so through looking at a terminal illness, I realized that I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I was just too afraid.
Mhm.
So I was thinking, now's the time, man. I use these strategies on myself. Where else can I use them? And I knew psychology and I knew real estate investing. I just put them together. And what I found was that people who are doing syndication, which is raising capital from private investors to do great big deals, it feels like the Wild West, especially in your mind. It's only you in charge. There's no boss. None of my clients have bosses. They hate bosses. They never want to have a boss. Bosses are a four-letter word. But then as soon as they're out on their own, they're like, crap, I need a boss. Because it's scary to be out there on your own. It's scary to be the person who writes all the checks. And it's scary to be the person who has to look in the mirror every day and says, I'm good enough to do this job. And so I help people do that with custom mental systems.
That's a journey. That's quite a journey. It's not the usual one that people will go through to get to doing, um, working with real estate and raising capital. But you feel like throughout the whole process that you had until you got to that point, um, even in the early days, you mentioned that you saw people that did bad things and they felt that was the only way, and they needed psychology or a mindset to understand that that's not the only way of living and going through whatever you're doing. And then,
Mhm.
like you said, you got to the point where you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and that changed your life. Now, that book, I'm going to stop here and we'll continue with the rest. That book is very polarizing because I think the number one thing that even till today, owning your home, asset or a liability, is still the argument. In your mind, asset or liability, owning a home.
Mm. Depends. I have homes that are assets and I have a home that's a liability. The house I'm in right now, my home office, is a liability. All my other properties that I own are assets. Well, maybe not the two that are being currently built. Those might be liabilities. I am a Kiyosaki fan in terms of the accounting there. And he says it's a glorified accounting book, right? I don't know. I think there's more to it. But I definitely see it. That helped me out to realize the difference between assets and liabilities. Is assets put money in my pocket every single month. Liabilities takes money out. And I think it blows people's mind to hear things like your home is a liability. Your
Yeah.
401k is a liability. Your pension right now until you start earning is a liability.
And some of those are very, that's why I said polarizing, because people don't see it like that, because for so many years they've heard the opposite, and then you listen to this guy and you read the book and like, okay, I don't know about that, and you kind of struggling and fight with that one. And I think the one that I struggle the most till today is um running your business. Depending how much time you spend in your business, it is a liability. It is not an asset because you are exchanging your time for money. The business is a asset when you don't spend a lot of time in it, working in it. You are more kind of like the CEO position. Now, where do you see it? Running a business, asset, liability.
Interesting. I hadn't really thought about it, but I've got some thoughts right off the bat. First of all, I don't think it applies because um, we're talking about vocation and purpose, not necessarily passive income. I think you can have a business that has passive income. Now we're getting more into like the Michael Gerber E-Myth type thing.
Yeah.
Are you working in your business or on your business? A lot of people say they have a business when they're really self-employed,
Yeah.
myself included. I meet with clients one-on-one, I lead groups, all that kind of stuff requires my time. So you could say that that's a liability. However, I love doing it. And so it's a vocation. It's my purpose. So it's what I'm doing with my time. One of the problems that some of my clients have is getting to a point where they realize they don't have to work anymore. And it's usually way after the fact that they've reached financial freedom. Usually it's 5, 10 years after the fact that they've reached financial freedom. One of my clients, Bobby, just hit this a couple months ago. One of his investors said, "Oh, it must be nice for you. You don't have to work for money." And he called me and he was like, "Is that true? I don't have to work for money." I'm like, "Bobby, it's been that way for a long time, dude. Like, you're good." And he's like, "Oh, well, now what do I do?" Our what we do for a living, our job, our career, our business, whatever you want to call it, it gives us more than an asset. It gives us more than money. It gives us more than finances. It defines who we are. It says, "I believe in this, not this." It gives us something to do with our time in a way to help out. Now, my friend Bobby, when he realized this, he didn't go into the office for like 2 months. He just stayed in his studio in San Francisco because that's what happens when you're like a multi-billionaire in San Francisco. You have a studio apartment, and so he was there with his dog, going to the Golden Gate Bridge. And what he realized is he loves mentoring people. And so he asked me permission. Is it okay if I just mentor people? I'm not going to charge them. I'm like, you do whatever you want. It's your life. Going back to before, everyone needs a boss, everyone needs approval for somebody. So I think it's more than that. I don't think the asset versus liability applies here because let's say we take a look at your business or my business, be like, you're done, you're not working here anymore. we would go, oh crap, what do I do? You know, everyone wants to go to a beach and sip on cocktails. I know you've done that recently. Everyone wants to do that, but you get bored.
You do.
I don't know about you, but on vacations, I'm a nightmare. My wife can sit at the beach and read for 3 days straight. I've got a mountain of brochures, and I'm like, let's go. I'm like a golden retriever with my tail wagging. I'm like, what are we going to do next? What are we going to do next? We've got to focus our attention on something that makes us feel fulfilled. And that's what jobs do. So what different KPI are you looking at this asset versus liability on? And so I don't think it's quite relevant.
I'm happy to hear that because that was the one that I was, like I said, struggling with because I'm like, I know that I will never want to be out of it. I always would like to do what I do. I don't want to just be a board member and that's about it. I never envisioned that for DoneMaker. I always envisioned I'm a part of it and helping a lot of people with what I do and helping growing people in the team and helping the organization grow. But I never saw myself as just kind of standing in the distance and doing nothing. And that's why I struggle with it. I'm like, I don't feel like it's a liability. I know he labels that in the book, but I always felt it a little bit different. And I do agree that before, again, we're going to mindset. Before, when I would go on a vacation, it was like, I'm not touching anything, throw away the phone, batteries dead. I don't want to talk to anyone because I'm on vacation. And then after one afternoon, you're like, okay, we sat on the beach. I'm relaxed now. I'm not stressed. I'm okay. One day passes by. Now you're starting to get bored. But what I did differently this time was I did take some client calls. I did work a little bit, probably like an hour or two a day or something to see how this whole thing works. Because a couple of people told me like, hey, look, if you do that, you do whenever you want to do it. Isn't that the whole purpose? You're on vacation, you work as much as you want or as little as you want. I'm like, that's it. It was like, try to do that and you will see your vacation maybe in a year, 2 or 3, it will not be a 7 days. It will be 14. And then it goes into what you see a lot of successful people do, like a month of vacation. Well, they do work, they do take calls. There's no way to just be completely disconnected. And I felt that was the right approach, kind of that vocation, if you will, where you work as much as you want, you enjoy you're on vacation. And I realized like this is the only way that I can be very, very happy with what I do and kind of building and kind of continue on that path now.
Mhm.
When we
I'm
talk
going to
about
stop you right there, Zivko, because I got to say something I think this is really important. You hit on it, is that people build businesses so that they can go on vacation whenever they want, right?
yeah,
But what people really want is a 24/7 vacation mindset. You want that mindset of where you're at right now, which is, hey, I can enjoy life. I don't have to constantly be on. I don't have to constantly be looking up YouTube videos or DIYing this or figuring this out. I don't have to be stressing about this. I'm okay being me
Mhm.
and doing the things I love in the business. I think people want that vacation mindset more than they want a vacation, even.
It's true because when you go on vacation, you say, I want to disconnect, I want to relax. That's all our mindset things. You don't go on vacation because you really want to swim 4K every day. Like it's not part of your thing unless you're an athlete. But it's that I think you're right. It's that mindset that's what at least that's what I wanted. More relaxed mind, kind of unwind. A lot of thoughts there, de-stress, and all of a sudden you start getting the right ones. All of a sudden you start getting good ideas and clear paths where you want to go forward. But you're absolutely right. It goes back to the right mindset in that. And if I have this 24/7 vacation mindset, I'll be amazing. It'll be
Yeah,
fantastic.
isn't that great?
Yeah.
Isn't
Yeah.
that great? Because you don't want to quit working.
No,
You just want to quit worrying about the dumb crap about work, right?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, for real estate syndication, it's kind of where you
Yeah.
specialize in and kind of where you develop now. Um, you did say it's kind of like the Wild West when someone starts there and they're on their own and there's a lot of obstacles. First of all, can you walk me through a regular day of what does a real estate syndicator do?
Yeah. So a real estate syndicator is someone who invests in real estate deals that are bigger than someone can do on their own. And so it's a collective conglomerate, a puzzle, if you will, that someone puts together or a team puts together to get a big project done. Movies are a classic example of syndications. Movies pretty much always are syndicated. The executive producers are the syndicators of the movie. They raise the capital from private investors. And then they put together and then they hire the team that directs the movie, that casts the movie, that stars in the movie. And then there's the marketing and sales team, right? That tells you about it, makes the trailer, makes everything exciting, lets you know that there's a new Marvel movie when you're at Taco Bell or whatever, you know. And then there's the client delivery part, which shows the movie. And real estate syndication is the same. It's a group of people who are really good at market analysis, figuring out what the market needs, whether it's an apartment building, whether it's some new Starbucks buildings, medical equipment, self-storage, all that kind of stuff. And they say, who would like to get involved with this? So they raise capital from other people offering that investment. It's an alternative to Wall Street, the S&P, all that kind of stuff. And so you can own a part of this great big building, and then the team who raised the capital then usually operates that. So they find the tenants, they do the fixes, all that kind of stuff, and then over time they distribute the realized gains to everybody, and so it comes out with cash flow, and then at the end, usually when they sell it or refinance, then there's a big paycheck. You redeploy funds, and so what's great is it's a safer way to get more funds and to invest better than the Wall Street.
So it's a
And so a
safe.
typical day, I'm sorry, you talked about a typical day of a real estate syndicator. They do four things all day, every day. They do four things all day, every day. They build their brand, they build their network, they find deals, they find capital. So you build your brand, you're out there, hey, talking to people, trying to be on podcasts, trying to create a podcast, being the go-to person. You build your network, you go to conferences, you meet people, you get on LinkedIn, you get on Instagram, Facebook, you're chatting with people all day long. And then you have to find deals. You have to find investments that make sense for the long haul. And then you find capital. You find the people who will invest into your investment there that you're putting together.
That's a very complicated process. And I know it sounds very simple, bring it down to 4 points, but it sounds like it's a very complicated process. If someone is listening to this, how does a person start in this field of real estate syndication?
You say, I'm a real estate syndicator. I mean, that's what I mean by the Wild West. What's great is that it's like an anti-corporate, all-inclusive business resort. Everyone's involved. We have a bunch of doctors who got burned out, who are excellent syndicators. We have engineers who get burned out, data scientists who get burned out. We have immigrants who can't get other jobs and are like, I'll get into real estate syndicating, and they're fantastic at it. If you've got hustle, you've got a spot here. If you have collaboration and teamwork skills, you've got a spot here. It's not complicated in the sense that we're just running numbers and then we're solving problems. There's a bunch of people out there who are afraid of Wall Street right now, who are afraid of the stock market. What's going to happen? It feels like a gamble. It feels like a risk. Oh, right here. This is a multifamily property, an apartment building with 200 units. We're going to need housing then, now, and forever. This is a safer place to store your money.
I see. Now, it is interesting because it really comes down to like the mindset that you can just say, I'm a real estate syndicator. You need to have the hustle, teamwork, collaboration, and you can start on this whole thing. It's not, you need to go through that school and that work, and then eventually kind of start there. It's more of mindset, and then you can start putting all those pieces together. And on the opposite side of that, what I would say is you have people like Simon Squibb, who owns Help Bank. He was in marketing in the past. He's fairly popular now on YouTube, who is really against real estate syndication. And he's really against people owning multiple doors, multiple units, because in his words, still you're preying on the working nurse, the working minder, whoever it might be, the single parent and all that jazz. He says that you are working against the working class by owning so many. You can do it in a different way. How do you feel when you hear someone like Simon or other people when they start saying, this real estate syndication stuff that you guys do is not the right way for our society?
Yeah, well, I've got a lot of things, I guess, about that. First of all, he is entitled to his opinion.
Yeah.
Like we all see the world in different ways. And when it comes down to it, we all want the world to be better. We all want families to eat together. We all want, families to go up and kids to go to great schools and all that kind of stuff. Like we all want the same thing. The facts of the matter are is that fewer people want to own than before. More millennials, Gen Zers and millennials, and there's even like a new generation. I don't know the name, but they're not out of high school yet. They resoundingly don't want to own. Like my generation, I'm a Gen Xer. We're like 56% want to own, 44 want to rent forever. Where millennials are like, I don't really want that. And even the Gen Zers are like 60% rent, 40% own. So first of all, people don't want to own. The reason why is because you can get all sorts of cool amenities. You can get the pool, the fitness center, the library, the coffee shop in your place. All that kind of stuff is really cool. Plus, there's more digital nomads. There's more people making money in the gig economy. So it's like I can get up and move whenever I want. I don't have to spend all this time and effort with a realtor, with doing 7%, commission over here and paying the bank and all that kind of stuff. Also, there's other ways that you can make money and make equity. I don't think it's the American dream to own your home anymore. I think it is the American dream to have your space, to have a spot that you call home, for sure. But more and more people don't want it. Now, if we get back to, let's say someone does want it, but the price of real estate has gone so up so high that they can't afford it, right? There's a lot of places where you can rent that are more affordable. And let's go back and just say, okay, real estate syndication, real estate investing is illegal. A lot of people out there can't put together the 20% down payment to own a home. So they'll be homeless. A lot of people don't have the credit score, have a lot of student loan debt. Maybe they defaulted on a car loan. Credit card debt is at record high. Car debts, car loans is at record high. So there's a lot of debt hanging out. There isn't a lot of savings going on. And so the behaviors of people aren't in line with home ownership at the same time that people's minds are saying, I don't really want to own a home anymore. The new starter homes aren't what the old starter homes used to be. The new starter home is getting smaller and smaller, and it's very little land. It used to be a quarter acre, a third of an acre was standard. Nowadays, people are like, hey, give me like an eighth or a tenth of an acre, and can you give me like a pickleball, area instead of I don't want to mow a lawn? Or even better yet, can we get an HOA so someone else mows the lawn? So people just want their like indoor space where they can hang out, and they want less of the like traditional white picket fence.
So it's more of the shift that is already naturally happening because
Yeah.
of our new way of living, basically, that is not tied to as it was before. You go somewhere, you move, you buy a house, you plant your seed. This is the roots you have. You're not moving anywhere. Where now, when you can work from anywhere in the world, depending on where you are, it doesn't make that much sense. Renting, plus also for business purposes, you can use that to your advantage more so than going back to rich dad, poor dad. Renting makes more sense. So if you try to villainize saying that that's the wrong way, it is not reality of what is happening of people working everywhere, taking long vacations, not really wanting to be tied down to one place, and even more so of it's the space they want. I want my space. I don't necessarily need to own it because let's say if you want to be in a fantastic city, there's not a lot of houses. Renting will give you all the amenities, will give you all the stuff that you need, and that is kind of where people are already slowly but surely moving towards, and therefore syndication makes a lot of sense.
Yep, I think so. The two big demographics that everyone's looking at, right, are the boomers and the millennials. And both of those are moving overwhelmingly more towards apartments than towards owning their own home. Boomers are downsizing from big homes to apartments to, like 55 plus living centers, assisted living, community living type environments. And people who are younger want to have the amenities. They want to enjoy life instead of being at home cutting the grass, doing the hedges, pulling weeds.
It's
Yeah.
not fun.
I mean, that's kind of what it is. But I'm a dad. I'm a 44-year-old dad. And so like I love lawns.
And the New Balance shoes and barbecue. Boom, there we go.
Brooks. I'm on to Brooks shoes now. Once you go Brooks, It's awesome. It's
It's
great.
awesome. Now, when someone starts this journey and they see the positive and they see the negative, we talked just about the negative now, and they start thinking about this, and you're saying, look, it's the Wild West. You can be a real estate syndicator, but you need to look at mindset and you need to look at all these other things. So now you talk about performance psychology. Can you tell me how does performance psychology work?
Yeah. So back in the day, when I first started getting into psychology and the mental health field 20 years ago, mostly it was we're treating illness, right? And we're trying to eliminate illness. There was a little bit of sports psychology there. Business psychology was just very much at the cutting edge, but no one thought of it. It was mostly hocus pocus. Nowadays, I think we're at a tipping point where every single USA Olympic athlete, sorry, you're in Canada, I don't know you guys' stats, but every USA Olympic athlete has a non-sanctioned psychological coach working for them. Why? Because without your mind is a part of your body. Your body can't fully function at its best and perform at its best if your mind isn't there. Simone Biles competed in these Olympics, but not the last one because she got the yips. It was a mindset thing for her. Her mind wasn't prepared for her to compete, so she couldn't. She couldn't do what was it, like a 3.5 backflip twist without her mind being there. Usain Bolt, he broke the world record for 100 meters. He talked about last time, he didn't compete this time, but last time he said, I visualized for 4 years running a 9-second race. He said 3 times a day, I would visualize me winning a 9-second race for 4 years. That's pretty amazing. And now what we do with the STARS method and with performance psychology is we take a bunch of psychological theories, 11 of them, in fact, and I put them into a blender. And this is something that I've found myself through my own journey and talking with other real estate syndicators. What we do is we take psychological theories and we put them together so that we can take you from being good or great to excellent to top notch to the top 0.1% in your field by getting your mindset perfect. We all have limiting beliefs floating around in our brains. They're hidden from us. We have 35,000 thoughts a day. 96% of them are recurring. So we think our limiting beliefs are truth, but they're not. I was working with a guy 2 weeks ago. He was tearing up. We were talking about a basketball coach of his in 6th grade. And he wrote the basketball coach a letter. He finally realized why the basketball coach played his son instead of him. He's been holding on to that for 33 years, he said. He was in tears. He's like, that's been at the back of my mind for 33 years. I felt like I wasn't good enough. I felt like I was never going to be good enough. I felt like the world was unfair. I was growing my business out of spite. He said, now that's gone. He called me a week later. The son of a gun bought a food hall in Detroit for $12 million like that next week. Opportunities just come up naturally when we get out of our own way. That's what performance psychology does.
So it's very powerful when you put it in real numbers and in real kind of psychological backing. That you say like 35,000 thoughts per day,
Yeah.
96% reoccurring, and we by default are more negative. We usually say no because of how we are as human beings. We want to protect ourselves, so we always usually say no because of threats and fears, and
Hmm.
therefore most of our thoughts are limiting beliefs. How do you explain to someone that is like BS, complete BS? I don't believe in this. How do you have a method to say like, look, I can clearly show you that most of our thoughts are negative. You have limiting beliefs, and I can show you very simply that you do have a lot of limiting beliefs. They're not hocus pocus. It's a real thing.
Sure. I can tell you tomorrow you're going to raise $500 million. And
Okay.
you'll say, no, I'm not. And I'll say, why not? And they'll say, oh, because I don't have the connections or this, or I don't have the CRM or whatever. And I'm like, okay. So already you're coming up with excuses just like that. And you think that it's real, it's true, but someone out there is going to raise $500 million this year. In fact, one of my guys, Dave, raised $1 billion. So it's like someone's going to do it. And the other way, the way that we take a look at limiting beliefs, where we find the roots here of your mental resistance is in middle school. That's when we create what's called post-operational thought in our minds, okay? We have the ability at that point. So I can say, okay, you don't believe me? Let's go back to middle school. Let's go back to sixth grade, Zivko. How confident were you then?
Very confident.
You were?
Yeah.
Fantastic, man. So you fit in always? Every time you asked the girl out and she said, yeah?
No, I was confident though.
Okay, cool. Were you confident or cocky?
Uh, Thinking now, maybe cocky because maybe you want to prove to yourself or to other people. Yeah.
Yeah. So you were confident but weren't authentic. You weren't being your true self.
In a moment like that you explained in grade six, probably yes.
Gotcha. So let's think about yesterday. Was there a time yesterday when you felt very confident, but you had to pump yourself up to be confident? You had to pump yourself up.
Yes.
There you go. And so that happens. Those replays happen over and over and over. It's because your brain is telling you, thanks for putting yourself on the spot. I appreciate that. But it's because our brain tells us over and over and over that that's how it is. Anything different is a huge risk. We need three things in life psychologically. We need validation, we need recognition, and we need connection. Connection is the most important one. And that's where our limiting beliefs come up. We think if we act one way, people are going to hate us. If people see the real me, they won't know how confident I am. If people see the real me, they'll think I'm unworthy, or they'll think I'm a fraud, or they'll know I'm hacking it, or they'll know this or this or this. And our brains are irrational. So they go to somewhere like, then they'll kick me out. I'll lose my business. All my employees will quit working for me. I'll be all alone. And so our brains are there to keep us safe. Our brains are not wired to make our lives awesome. Our brains are wired to keep us alive. And how do we stay alive? By never ever changing, by never taking a risk. It's called homeostatic nature. So our brains keep us the same. And so change itself, just the word change, becomes very difficult, very emotionally challenging to truly change. That's why I guide people through that so that they can do it and really dive in with someone who's been there, done that, and can guide them through it. Because what most people do is they fear it and fear it and fear it. And so they say, oh, I'll read a book on mindset. I'm good. But really what that book does is it just scratches the surface. It's just putting a band-aid on a broken heart, essentially. It's really kind of an act more than it is moving the needle. But
It's
once you embrace the fact in the past that that's what's happened, you can build yourself back up. You don't have to run away from it. You can embrace it, and then life gets just much easier. That's kind of where that vacay mode kind of comes in.
it's a it's an interesting way that you can display it very quickly that we have these limiting beliefs because for the longest time I connected excuses to limiting beliefs. So what's my
Mhm.
excuse? Probably my limiting belief, and I might be wrong, but that's kind of how I connected those two.
Yeah.
And even for someone that like I read so many books, and when we talk about this, I would say I've talked to something similar to this to a lot of my friends about Think and Grow Rich, and they will just say it's hokey, man. It's out there. Like, what do you want to think about a Ferrari and a Ferrari going to appear? And when you're trying to explain that, look, if you start thinking about the Ferrari or raising 500,000 or 1 billion, you start moving in that direction. And
Hmm.
then you would have obstacles. And then you still move in that direction. But if you just say, it's impossible, it ends there and the other thing never happens. Do you, when you talk to people, do you frame it in that kind of mindset to like, look, I'm not telling you envision 1 billion and it's going to appear you a sack of money. It's the movement towards the goal.
Yeah. Yeah. So narrative identity theory here is what we're talking about. Basically, narrative meaning the stories you tell yourself, the identity. The stories you tell yourself become who you are, right? And so if it's not, oh, I'm going to think about $1 billion and then it suddenly appears. I'm going to think about the actions it takes to get $1 billion. And then my brain is pre-seasoned. It's warmed up to do it. I said before, 35,000 thoughts, 96% of them are recurring. I talk about our subconscious as like a really bad top 40 radio station. They play only the hits, right? But here's the thing, if you can get a new song in there, it's going to start to play on repeat. And you're going to start to get to know those lyrics, and then next thing you know, you're listening to a Miley Cyrus song for no reason. We can do that same trick with our brain. It's understanding the game that the brain plays and playing it right back. So affirmations absolutely work. Just yesterday, I was meeting with a guy. He's does AI automations and things like that. And he was thinking, he's like, I pay you for this. I still think it's voodoo, but damn, it works. And I was like, all right, yeah, yeah, yeah. And so it's like, it's definitely a process, right? As we tell ourselves different things, our identity will slowly change, That's like the one thesis I take away from Atomic Habits, the book by James Clear, is it's all based on narrative identity theory. If I want to change, I'm going to tell myself that. It's a book about affirmations. So if you want to make an affirmation for yourself, it has to be 3 rules. It has to hit all 3 of these check boxes. 1, it has to start with I. It has to be about you. So it has to say I, right? The next one, not like this business is going to grow. It has to be I. The second one, it has to be present tense and positively stated. So like I'm growing my business. It can't be next year my business will be this much, because then your subconscious is like, cool, I'll be over here on a smoke break. Let me know when we're working,
Yeah.
And then the third thing is it has to be in your voice. It can't be, hey, live, laugh, love. It can't be, I'm a winner, because no one says that. It has to be in your own voice. My inner voice is kind of silly. It's like kind of like a frat guy. And so a lot of my affirmations end with bruh. It's like, it's like, what was the affirmation I've been saying lately? Oh, I'm a pro, bruh. Like, it's just silly. It's like I'm embarrassed saying that out loud. But that's something I actually say to myself. So it has to be about you, has to be present tense and positive, and it has to be in your own words. Otherwise, your subconscious easily is like, nope, that's not us. So if you really want an affirmation, a thought about yourself to really catch hold, it's got to hit all 3 of those check boxes.
So it's a good approach because it's breaking it down. It's simple that you can start working on it, but it doesn't happen overnight. And we do have lapses. It's normal. I've had these moments of positive information and I'm on the run, and then one bad thing, another
Mm,
obstacle, a third difficult situation, and you start going into a different direction. For me, luckily, I can just talk to my wife, and I'm like, "This is what is happening," and she's like, "Okay, let's just look back at the last year. Let's look back at the last
mm,
3 years. Let's look at
mm,
back last week." Like we forget about the stuff that the progress that we made, and we also sometimes when those difficult things happen, we forget about the present and the positive. Like I was on vacation last week. 2 people, older couples, stopped and said, "What a wonderful family you have. Look at your son. He looks so much like you." And I was like, I haven't thought about family for
mm,
a while because you're just stuck in the work and you never stop to like, there's a lot of people that are struggling to have kids and they can't. There's a lot of people that have difficulties in the family or in the marriage, and all of that is not here. Like you have this present moments that you forget because you're stuck on going through a hard period. And usually hard periods for someone that is in business, I feel like it's not like a day or two a week. It's usually like a whole quarter is like it's not going, and you're projecting. Now you start to project, well, I think the next quarter is also going to be sucky. And that slowly pulls you out of the positive information that you had, all the way that you were building up yourself. Like you said, you're confident or cocky, you're building up, and then you start slowly and I need to get back into it. And at least what I've seen, and you can tell me how you feel about that, is a couple of small wins. Just boom, boom, couple of small wins sets you back to get you out of that negative rut, if you will.
mhm.
Do you have a different process to get someone out of a negative rut and getting them back into while they were doing good progress?
Yeah, I think what we could do here is we could like let's zoom out, right? Okay. So like growth in its sense, like there's the content of it. Like this is going bad, or I haven't closed a sale, or no one's invested with me, or whatever, right? That's the content of it. But if you take a look at the process of it, I think we can get a more robust analysis here. So the process here is growing, which makes you feel uncomfortable, especially psychologically, because growth is change. So you feel uncomfortable. So your subconscious is looking for ways to sabotage because your subconscious looks around and is like, oh, dude, we've got new things happening. What do we do? And that causes something called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive meaning brain. You've heard this term?
Yeah.
Dissonance, mismatch. So my internal and my external are mismatching. I've grown external. My business is doing great. But internal, I'm like, I still feel like this, like I'm not ready for this. I'm not prepared. I'm not set up. The team isn't set up. What's going on? You start to tell yourself those limiting beliefs. I'm not ready. And so what happens is your brain is like, what do we do? What do we do? How do we solve this cognitive dissonance? But your brain can't control the external. It can only control the internal. So any sort of mistake after you've grown, your brain's gonna be like, I told you, bruh. I told you. Yeah, that's what my brain would say. Like, I told you, bruh, like this wasn't gonna go anywhere. Or you're in over your head, or a good Minnesota saying here, you're out over your skis, like that you're getting ahead of yourself. Who do you think you are? That kind of stuff happens because our brains can only view and I'm sorry, like manipulate the internal. So it does big time. That's its only play. So if you can counterplay that with affirmations that get at the process of it, it's going to be really awesome for you. Something like doing an affirmation here. Like I tell people to put it on the mirror. So every time you wash your hands, because we all wash our hands, we should wash our hands every time. Then you say it out loud, because then you're involving the parietal and the occipital lobe, two different types of your brain on two sides. So every time you wash your hands, say something like, I overcome mistakes. I eat mistakes for breakfast. That's what one of my guys said. I eat mistakes for breakfast. You have to get yourself ready for mistakes. As an entrepreneur, that's what you're signing. That's your policy. It says, I agree that I will make tons of mistakes. Cool. If you don't want to sign that agreement, get a job. But if you want to be an entrepreneur, that's the agreement. I'm going to make a ton of mistakes. That's how my business moves forward, is I make a ton of mistakes. So just make mistakes okay. Make your brain okay with mistakes, season it, warm it up, set the oven to 350 degrees by saying, we're going to make mistakes, get used to it, and we come back. We eat mistakes for breakfast.
Okay. It's a good approach. Slightly like you have the mindset of give yourself grace, kind of. I've heard that somewhere. Give yourself grace. This is the first time you're doing all these things. Give yourself grace, man. You've never built a business before. Have you ever done real estate syndication? No, this is your first deal. Have you closed 10? No, you've closed two. So you give yourself grace. How do you feel about people that go on the opposite? I feel like it's the opposite of the stoic mindset.
That's a defense mechanism. We're talking about a bunch of defense mechanisms here. So a defense mechanism of stoic, I'm not going to have any sort of emotion.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a defense mechanism. I've played that game a lot. And so what I would say is you got to take a look at why that's happening in the first place. Again, go back to the past. What are the messages that other people told you that life is like? Did you learn from the past that we clip coupons around here? Because then that's really hard to move your business forward. Did you learn from the past that you get what you get and you don't throw a fit? It's a great way to raise a kid to eat every food on their plate, but that's an awful mindset as an entrepreneur. And so we have a ton of limiting beliefs that show up all of the time. And being stoic is a response to those limiting beliefs. I'm just going to not show emotion. I'm just going to not show emotion. But that avoids business, because I have yet to meet a business that isn't run on relationships. And so if you're stoic, you're eliminating business growth. You have to get emotional. You have to connect with people on a deeper level. And so it's just saying, I'm not willing to go there. And I've been there. For me, it was a response to trauma. When I was diagnosed with kidney disease and told I had 10 years to live, plus my wife has postpartum depression, she wants to die. Plus we've got a 3-month-old.
Yeah.
And I'm desperately trying to start business because I'm not going to leave these people homeless. I had to put my head down and get some work done. My therapist called that guy Hammer Chris. Hammer Chris gets shit done. But Hammer Chris doesn't have time to sit and chit chat. Hammer Chris doesn't have time to talk about the problems or think about the problems. Move on. Move on. You got kidney disease? Who cares? The doc tells you to eat 1,000 milligrams or less of sodium in a day. Take a pill, take steroids for 2 years. Do it. That's just the regimen. No problem. Done. But what I was neglecting that entire time was like, this other part of me was like, holy crap, man, like what's happening? But what you saw on the outside was like this stoic dude. It's a response. It's usually trauma. Sometimes it's I fear giving up control.
Mhm.
Like it's a lot, you see a lot of people micromanaging or DIYing in their business, like not hiring other teams. They've got to do it all themselves because they're afraid of things getting out of control. They were raised that if you look out of sorts, that means you're less than. I know in my family, when I grew up, my parents are farmers. If your front lawn isn't mowed perfectly, what the hell's going on inside that house? And we take these beliefs and we run with them, and so when we go back and we can take a look at them and be like, oh, that's ridiculous. Or I even asked my grandma, is it okay if it do should I still believe in I get what I get and don't throw a fit? And she said, heavens, buddy. She calls me buddy. She's like, heavens, you're a grown man. You've got your own food. You can do whatever you want. And I was like, oh, cool. Because I was hanging on to that for 35 years. She's like, well, I'm sure glad you were a listener. Like, but we all have those. Our limiting beliefs now were excellent beliefs then. And the people who taught them to us got something out of it. It's just asynchronous. It's out of date. It's out of style. And so Stoicism is just a defense mechanism. It's just another limiting belief. It's a symptom of something deeper.
The first time that I heard about it, I did read. I think the most popular one is Letters from Seneca. That's the one that I read.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, man, I can't. It's just not who I am. I'm really outspoken. I like to talk to people. You can throw me in a room with people. I have no problem connecting and talking. And not to show emotion and kind of take life as is, and not to reach out to my parents or to my brother or to my wife, to friends, and not talk about stuff. I'm like, just kind of hold it in. Like, but I did see that this movement started to be very popular, I think, with like younger people because it's just a way of coping, like you said. And now the way that you explained it's a defense mechanism. The way that it would cope with the situation has become a stoic, bro. It's not really something you can build a relationship with your kids. Imagine being completely stoic with your kids and how they will perceive dad. Like that'll be a very difficult relationship when they hit 20s, 30s, 40s. Just because your dad was never showing emotions is very difficult. And I think you're right. It's more like a defensive mechanism for a specific situation, but it's not a positive affirmation, and kind of accepting that in when you're going through growth is that cognitive dissonance. And I use that all the time. I love that one. I think it was from 48. I forgot the name of the book, but when I read it the first time, I'm like, that's exactly what I see all the time. And you would see it with people that would be very successful and like, oh, but he's probably like, I don't know, 3 times divorced. He's probably like an alcoholic. You have no idea. You just, because it's so unreachable, you start
Mm-hmm.
to come up with all these weird stories. And I feel like that's always wrong, but I always go back to that. I really like the cognitive dissonance and I apply it as much as I can because you need to be real with yourself. And why are you creating that disconnection? Now,
Mm-hmm.
when when you're doing all these things with your clients and you're talking about the processes and you have a nice framework and you define everything and you have the psychology backing. You said you came down to the STARS method, and it's on your website, and I kind of skimmed through it, just to going through that acronym. Can you explain to me what do you mean by the stars method, and why did you lay them out in that specific order?
Mm. Yeah, it's generally the process that we go through in terms of defining yourself as moldable
Hmm?
and changing yourself uh, through learning about yourself, re-experiencing childhood, and defining those limiting beliefs and taking away the power of your thoughts and limiting beliefs, and then creating your legacy. So the stars is 11 different psychological theories all put together. So the first S is, it's an acronym, like everything in psychology has got to be an acronym, right? So the S is study your unique psychology. So who you are is different than me. So any sort of book isn't going to apply to both of us.
Right.
In fact, I would say that most books apply to nobody except the author. Now we can pick and choose some things, like we talked about Atomic Habits, we talked about Rich Dad Poor Dad, E-Myth. There's things you can take out and learn,
Mhm.
but you're not going to change who you are from those books.
Right.
So we study your unique psychology. Next, we tear apart limiting beliefs. We do that by some of the processes we talked about in this podcast,
Mhm.
by studying your childhood. Who was influential in your life? What were some of the events in your life? What did you learn from them? How have they manifested and become truth when they're really not? They're just thoughts. It's just electrical impulses running across like some sort of liquid in your brain, which is weird, you know? And then next we do is we ask different questions. So we go to the future. We talk about your last day on earth, what has to happen, your last hour, your last minute, your last breath. What happens at your funeral? We plan your funeral. We spend some time on that, thinking about who's going to be there. What are they going to say? What food and beverages are going to be served there? Where's it going to be at? All that kind of stuff. We plan that out. We make it real because it's going to happen. And so you could either choose to run from it or you can embrace it. And what people find throughout this is they get incredibly relieved when they're done with it. And then we go into the future. We talk about your second life after you're physically gone, but your legacy moves on. What do people get from you? What is going to be your impact on this world? What's going to be your imprint? What are people going to remember you by? And then we talk to God. What does God think about your life and all this kind of stuff? Did you use your tools? Did you mismanage them? What did he wish you would have done differently? And then we take you and God in the future, we bring it all back, and we talk to you in sixth grade. And what people find throughout this is somehow, through voodoo, they raise 86% more capital in the next quarter. They grow their assets under management by 41%. We're talking millions of dollars. Typically, for my clients, what they do is they then raise their portfolios about $12 million after doing this, 3 months after doing this. And so it's incredibly powerful. It's easier than you think,
Mhm.
but it's hard to do. It's hard to do. It's emotionally, psychologically difficult. Most people think it's going to be an 11 out of 10 on the Richter scale. It's usually like a 6 out of 10. And people feel awesome afterwards. Like it's so fun to end calls. And I'm like, hey, how did that go? And people are like, oh, this was awesome, dude. Oh, I can't believe I didn't do this sooner. Or, Brandon, who's like, I've been hanging on to that for 35 years, and I'm just excited to offer this and share this for people because there's so much just awesome talent inside of people
Mhm.
that is wrapped over blankets of really bad advice.
It's a good way of putting it. It's a good way of putting it. And I think what you also described is that um, I think of like the hero journey where you start and somewhere in the hero journey you have Obi-Wan Kenobi, you have Master Yoda, someone like you that shows up and guides you because it might be in you. You don't know how to get it out or you don't know how to set the course right. But when you have that a guide that shows up, someone like you sets the course and you can achieve it. You were always destined and able to achieve it. It's just that you need someone like that guide that shows up in the hero journey always to move you, to guide you to achieve whatever you were destined and what you wanted to get out of life. And I think you go very deep in the last day and past the last day to uncover all those things and to be able to have like real impact. It's not just like, okay, I feel really good. We also feel very good with the portfolio growing 41%. So
Mhm.
if someone wants to get a hold of you to be their guide in their hero journey, how did I do that, Chris?
Yeah, well, I'd be honored to. You can find me on LinkedIn. I post every day there, and I'm there commenting every day, helping people out. My last name is Schwagerl. The R is silent. It's part of my immigration story. You can ask me about that. And also, you can find me at the brand new website there, infiniteskies.life. I didn't know you could do a dot life, but it's kind of exciting. Infiniteskies.life.
Fantastic. Well, Chris, thank you so much for the time. I know we're out of time. We're all done. I think it was fantastic. I love the details and the structure that you provided with every single answer. It wasn't what we read in the books, just repeating it. It was very granular with that, the affirmations and how to do it, how to structure it, and how to avoid the defensive mechanisms and what that really is. And if you're kind of in that journey and how to really start believing that you can achieve. If you really want to be a real estate syndicator or if you really want to be something else, start. It's a mindset. There's processes and there's things you need to do, but you definitely need to have someone like you to guide you, and then you can unlock all those things, all those things in your journey. So I do thank you for the time. Thank you so much for being raw and real with all that information.
Yeah, it was a pleasure, Zivko. Thanks for having me.